All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We wanted to go over our new Zero Trust Network Access offering. So Tom's going to go through and give us an overview of how that works with our system. And so if you do have any questions or anything along the way, please put them in the chat, but we'll take questions at the end. So with that, I will turn it over to Tom.
Very good. Thank you, Corey, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's joined, and thank you for joining us. Right, so let's see. I guess since there seems to be as many definitions of zero trust or ZTNA out in the marketplace as there are vendors, I thought I would start with a very quick rundown on what exactly is it that we mean by zero trust. So zero trust for us is not, it doesn't actually literally mean zero trust. You can't get anything done if you don't have no trust at all. But it's a principle that says do not trust anything by default. So just because you have the credentials doesn't mean that you get full access. And in this day, I mean, in the last, I would say 2 or 3 months, that I've been watching people breaking into various systems, credential theft has been one of the larger sources of ransomware infections and all kinds of other stuff, exfiltration, etc. So just because you have credentials doesn't mean that you should have access to everything on the network, which is effectively, zero trust. So the zero trust principle is applied to security, but ZTNA extends it to the network. So basically, it seeks not only to establish who you are, that's where your credentials come in, but also to verify your device. What exactly is it that you're using to log in, and where are you, and what are you trying to get to? And should you be even trying to get to that, and what time is it, and all that good stuff. So if someone with your stolen credentials is logging in from Moscow at 2 a.m. in the morning and attempting to get into the CRM server, then you should probably block it. So this allows you to do that section of resources with access control, audit everything, log everything, and generally apply that zero trust principle to the network itself. So this obviously is extraordinarily painful to do in any conventional way. I mean, going through every single customer's resources and access controls and this and that and all that kind of stuff is just enormously painful. So what ZTN allows you to do is to not start trying to build innumerable ACLs for this and all that, but instead do policies. And so rather than try and do fine-grained permissions, you set up policies and then say what these policies allow you to access, and then assign users to policies, take them out of policies in order to be able to control the access, as opposed to this user, that user, they all have different things. Okay, so what we've done at Uplevel is to build a zero trust network architecture that uh, uses zero trust principles as a foundation, and it combines a bunch of different things. So there's an IDP that is used to confirm, I mean, identity provider for confirming identity, and eventually, and also actually right now it is able to do SSO with other IDPs. And so we are busy building out that particular piece of the infrastructure. It incorporates also things like verifying device security. So is it a device that you expect? Is it not, etc. Location, time, and then cross-checking the network. Is this coming from a public IP or something that you expect, or is this coming from something completely different, somebody trying to hack it? Once the trust is established, then it is possible to start breaking off resources. And so you can break up the access by policy. And so if you've got a set of fairly critical servers, devices, whatever, then you can say those accesses only come from these trusted sources. And you're only allowed to use those applications when you're accessing those servers. And then after that, obviously, there's other security practices that are just good practices in general that are layered on top of that, which is obviously things like strong encryption, audit logging, so you can do forensics, and you can even feed those into the SIM so you can be alerted to odd stuff going on. So one question that we get asked a lot is how is this different from VPNs? Can't I just do this with a standard VPN? And the answer is not really. So VPN, I guess we use a metaphor to explain that. So a VPN is like building a castle, but with a single very large, well-defended gate in front of it. So once you're in through the gate, no one checks to see what you're doing. You're in. You can just wander through the place, and anyone who gets in is trusted anywhere, which means lateral movement is very easy. So this we have actually seen this happening. Just in the last 3 weeks, we had somebody with credential trust break in where they somehow got credentials, got in through a VPN connection. And once they were in, they actually got in and hopped into an unprotected workstation, used that to move laterally across to the server, then moved across to the entire network and exfiltrated about 5 terabytes of data, and then proceeded to lock everything down to the ransomware and demand a ransom. So lateral movement is extremely simple with the VPN. But with ZTNA is not. So the gate in front of the castle is just the first layer. Once you get in, you discover that you're actually starting to see a whole pile of locked rooms. And now you actually need to uh, get yourself into each one of those rooms separately. And that's, I mean, a good way to prevent lateral movements. So let's see. So what does Uplevel ZTNA provide in terms of all of this zero trust network access? What we try to do in our ZTNA is to provide most of the features that we believe are needed by small businesses and not necessarily by Bank of America. So first of all, it's agent-based, and so it's not a VPN client where you have to open up the client and connect it and all that stuff, which employees tend to not like at all. So it's agent-based and always on. So as soon as you open up your laptop, the ZTNA agent fires up an encrypted tunnel and gets you into the stuff that you need to get into. After verify identity with an identity provider, which we have built into the system. That is another thing that is different from VPNs, which is there's just simple accounts in VPNs with MFA, but the Uplevel ZTN has a full up IDP built into it, which has SAML 2.0 federation and all the rest of it, and can do apply policies and groups and all the rest of it. We also have dynamic posture checks. So we can track where a specific uh, client or device is trying to log in from. And then, in fact, it can geolocate down to a city. We can tell what operating system is being run by the client, what kind of applications are on the client, and if you have a process that you want to run, like an AV, or is like, okay, this is one of my clients, therefore he's always going to be running and my RMM, so we can check for that RMM. And if isn't running the RMM, then it's not allowed and so on. So this allows you to build in policy-based zero trust access management, saying that, well, all of my clients have this, therefore trust only those, and everything else is not trusted. In addition, on the infrastructure side, we have built-in DNS and NAT mapping. So this is actually handy for a fair number of larger scale operations where you can define DNS rules. I'll go into a use case where we did that. And something that users appreciate is that the agent deployment is self-service. So you don't go into your users' machines and install software and stuff. Instead, you send them a link. The link takes them to a web page. And as long as they have the proper credentials and the IDP says you can, then they can download and install an agent themselves onto their machine, which will then fire up and connect it. And those who don't have the proper credentials, even though they may have the link, will not be able to do anything about it. All of this stuff is managed in a centralized fashion, so that makes your life much easier because you basically go to one dashboard and you see the IDP, you see the network, you see what's going on, who's logging in on the IDP, and what are they doing when they get into the network, etc. All right, so to this is all well and good, but to ground this in some actual, realistic, where would I use this scenarios? I have three different usage scenarios that I'd like to go through. So you can get a sense of what possibilities exist for this in your own customer base. I mean, basically real customers. The first usage scenario is pretty straightforward. It's like a better VPN than VPNs. So it's a simple VPN replacement. I mean, these, by the way, these are all actual usage scenarios taken from our customer base. So they are running live today. So the first usage scenario, as I mentioned, was straightforward, better VPN than VPNs. So for the benefits for the customer was it was much simplified self-service enrollment install. The MSP appreciated the fact that he could just send a link to a customer, and the link would then walk them through the whole process of enrolling and installing themselves, as long as they had an actual account installed. But then there was better security because the keys, the IDP was able to rotate and expire keys automatically, so he could define key expiry times and require rotations and all the rest of it, and do that on based on policy. And that way, if there was a temporary user, they could get their key expired very quickly, whereas the legit users, sorry, the regular employees would have different expiry time and so on. The fact that it was an always-on VPN with an invisible agent, basically once the agent got installed, the employee never even noticed it. So open up the laptop is connected. So that was really handy. And the promise of in the future being able to SSO against things like Entra ID was a positive for the partner because I mean, in fact, this is something we have are demonstrating right now today in our lab is being able to just log into the ZTNA and find that you're automatically authenticated against Entra ID, and now Office 365 just opens. So that was a positive for this partner. The second scenario is a little bit more involved and higher level. This was a partner who had he had a customer who had sensitive data sitting on servers at the office with applications that needed to access all that data. But they also had a population of salespeople that were roaming around the place and potentially getting into situations where they would lose their laptop or somehow get hijacked while they were in some location where, salespeople just don't seem to have the proper sense of security, uh, believe it or not. So the salespeople needed RDP access only to the CRM server while they were on the road. But the regular employees needed access to other servers in the same LAN, but they wanted to be able to partition this so that the other servers were blocked off completely, no lateral movement from the salespeople, but the managers and so on needed full access. So they set up ZTNA and they just created two groups. One was for the salespeople, one was for the managers. They added a geo restriction on it that said, well, all the managers are sitting inside the state, and therefore anyone who is logging in from outside the state should not be allowed access to those other servers, the more sensitive servers. And of course, if the manager happens to travel out of state, well, he can darn well call the partner and say, well, I'm now somewhere else and I need access. Okay, the partner can enable temporary access for that manager for that duration in that group. But the salespeople are roaming all over the place, and so if they log in, then they are not geo restricted, but they only have access to the CRM server. Period. And this gave the customer a great deal of peace of mind because, like, okay, well, only people in this local area can access the sensitive stuff. And so you can't just go somewhere else to Europe and start trying to hack it. That was quite handy. The third one is probably the most convoluted of all, but it demonstrates what you can do with this technology. So we have a customer that has a bunch of franchises nationwide, about 50-ish, 42 plus locations. And so they had an interesting problem in that they needed hierarchical access. So the corporate that ran all the franchises needed full access to every single store, every resource, all the time. But then the regional managers handled only their regions, and they did not want to allow regional managers to have access to other regions because apparently there was information that the regional managers shouldn't be allowed to have. So that way they wanted to keep the regional manager only accessing those stores in that region. And then there were store managers who were only permitted to access their own stores. And for competitive reasons, they're not allowed to access other stores. And so they wanted to set all this up, but it was a complete nightmare if they wanted to do this using regular VPN because, well, first of all, 42 locations. That meant that the corporate had, what, 42 VPN accounts. The regional managers, even the regional managers had like 7 to 10 VPN connections. This was just not going to work flat out. Instead, they did it with our ZTNA. So they set up a group for each store, they set up a group for each region, and then they set up a group for the whole corporate. And basically, all of the peers at all of the stores were dropped into the corporate group. All of the peers at only one region were dropped in a regional group. And then the stores had individual store groups, and the store got dropped into the group. And that was the end of that. As an extra, we added DNS so that the managers could access by store name. And that way they didn't have to remember, well, click on this connection or whatever, or even the store IP and all that kind of stuff. It was just, yes, I need to access store XYZ, and they're there. So this made moves, adds, and changes really easy for the customer because if a store owner became a regional manager, all that happens is you move the that user's account from the group per store to the group per region, and bingo, they are now able to access all the stores in the region, and so on. And if the user leaves, you just destroy their account in the IDP, and suddenly they don't have access to the stuff at all anymore. So this made life much, much easier for the customer. It's sort of what ZTNA can do for you if you start using all of the different features. Okay, so to recap the benefits that Uplevel ZTNA brings, the basic thing is a better VPN. It's always on. Self-service installation is very efficient and lightweight compared to just about every other VPN, including SSL VPNs and so on. But it does increase security quite a bit. So you can apply policies to very much restrict lateral movements, and then apply posture checks and geofencing and all the rest of it to lock things down even more. And then the IDP is a very strong component which allows not just a centralized identity, but also to do federation, SSO, and things like session expiry. So it can revoke your session key after a certain number of hours so that you don't have always on VPN sessions being an issue. So how does it deploy in practice? So we've deployed this to several customers now. So basically what we do is set up a backend for the customer. And then after that, the partner finds it quite easy to activate. I mean, the end connections are basically peers. So they're agents on people's machines or in the office. And then add accounts. And then after that, you can start doing things like defining resource groups, connecting, or then everything else after that handles automatically. So agents connect in, the IDP verifies things, cloud management verifies the devices and controls access rights and all the rest of it. So once the setup is done, it is almost self-running in many ways. A few details about how things are set up to give you an idea of the flavor of what's under the hood. So things like setting up groups and policies is very straightforward. So it's essentially you can set up policies and then after that apply posture checks to these policies. So policy controls allow you to do things like limiting access to certain servers and devices. This is done either by limiting access to the peers that install on the servers and devices, or if you just have a single peer that accesses the entire network, then you can say you can actually set up routes, basically individual IPs or IP ranges that will say you can only get to this here once you get into the network, etc. So limit lateral movement in short. Then limiting services, you can monitor. So, for example, if the CRM server only has RDP access, or you only want to allow RDP access, you can say, well, only port 3389 RDP is open. You cannot access any other port when you connect, and that limits to the RDP access. So you can't get in and then suddenly go, does this thing have an open SMB port? Is there an SSL, an SSH connection that I can try and crack? All that stuff goes away. You can limit direction. So a user can reach a server, but a server can't go back, for example. And that way you can limit the spread of malware infections. So if accidentally something got dropped into the server, then it doesn't just allow the server now, the malware now to go find all the other devices that could be connecting in, and so on. Again, all this is done by groups. So you can set up a group which has these policies attached, and then after that, dropping nodes into the group will automatically apply those policies. I mentioned posture checks. That is also similarly set up. So it is a great way to reduce the attack surface, basically. So you can enforce things like geofencing. You can block devices that you don't expect to see connecting in. In fact, you can even block by unexpected OS and versions. And if you have different posture checks for different users, which starts getting a little complicated, then you can say, well, this user I know uses Mac. Well, if anyone logs in with that user's credentials on a Windows machine, block it. And you can even check for your own applications running on the devices. It does allow fallback policies. So if a user is traveling, but they need to get access to, for example, the corporate policy documents or something, you can have a fallback that says, well, normally the user is allowed to access all the sensitive data, but since we don't recognize this location from which the user is connecting in, let's restrict them to maybe a policy server on which they have a form that they can fill in to request access from you or something to that effect. So you can have fallbacks in that way. Okay, so the management of this whole ensemble is actually fairly straightforward. It falls under the Uplevel portal. So we took all of the stuff that was underneath and simplified it greatly. So the user management allows you to add and manage accounts, but it doesn't force you to go in and do all the stuff that full-sized IDP, which is what we have. We have a full-up IDP, but it's very complicated to set up. So we took care of all of that stuff. And 99% of what you need to do is account management. So that's right there on the portal. And similarly, the network management side handles connections, policies, posture checks, etc., in a pretty straightforward fashion. All right, so what's under the hood? What did we build this out of? So we use WireGuard, which is a very lightweight, fast, and modern VPN protocol. I think our engineers refer to it as this is what VPNs should have been from the beginning. So it's very secure, but is extremely fast and extremely lightweight. So this is sort of fundamental to how ZTNA or our ZTNA works, which is it sets up a full mesh of point-to-point tunnels from whatever agent needs to talk to whatever peer, which would have been impossible in a regular VPN, and setting up the full mesh would be just incredibly overhead intensive. You can do this with WireGuard. So what we then use on top of WireGuard is a software called NetBird, which creates cloud mediated full mesh tunnels. So this punches right through things like NAT gateways and so on. So everything comes in, talks to the cloud, says, I'm here. I need to talk to him. NetBird says, are you allowed to? Okay, good. In that case, here's how you reach that other peer, and it goes right through like ISP firewalls. Then on top of that, we layered an IDP, which is Citadel, and that has things like MFA, SSO, and Federation of Cloud Services, Entra ID, you name it, it's got it. And then we built on top of that a management plane that would allow us to make management and compliance very easy. And then integrated all of this, the agent stuff and all that into the Uplevel gateway. If so, our gateways can act as a routing pair, so that way you can get something that looks as easy to use as a regular VPN, but with the benefits of ZTNA. Okay, so to summarize what Uplevel ZTNA is, it's quote unquote a better VPN than VPNs. It's a better way to provide secure remote access for your customers. It is for sure a better way to control access to resources than trying to carve up your systems and building ACLs into those which are painful to manage and maintain. It is definitely a platform that we plan to build on. So we are adding in things. So our next product that we're working on is something that we refer to as hybrid SASE, and VPN, as you know, is a significant component of SASE. So we are building on the ZTNA platform to add additional cybersecurity stuff. It is available now, and we're certainly adding to it. So what is next? We are completing the full integration of the network management side into the Uplevel portal. So there's a bunch of things that we would like to fold in to increase the ability of our partners to do things like that special DNS setup, all that kind of stuff. We also receive requests to allow zero trust access to the resources on the gateway, especially things like shares that are on the gateway itself. And so we're adding that into the network management component as well. And then the biggest thing that we're working on is identity federation with things like Entra ID, Google Workspace, and our on-premises Active Directory, and so on. So we've been demonstrating this in the lab. So a user signing into the ZTNA will automatically get single sign-on into the cloud apps and so on. And then users logging into Active Directory workstations automatically get single sign-on into the shares, cloud apps, etc. So all that is something that is uh, starting to run in our lab and eventually will become part of the product. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. Good, actually, it was almost dead on time at 30 minutes. I'd like to turn it back to Corey for questions.
All right. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll go through them. Um, excuse me, it looks like we've got the first one. Is there a quiet install option? We prefer to install without user involvement and then use Entra integration to ensure that ZTNA is always on with Entra login.
The first one I can answer for sure, yes. You can, with your RMM tool, just go in and install this for them and set a temporary password and they will log in. And this, in fact, we've tested that ourselves as well. Obviously, you need access to the customer device in some form or the other, otherwise there's no such possibility as a quiet install. The second one is in terms of Entra ID, that is, as I mentioned, a work item. It is a work in progress, but we hope to roll it out in the next release.
Okay. How does the speed compare with the ZTNA versus traditional VPN?
Yes, much better. So, for example, I've had a ZTNA agent sitting on my laptop for months and months since like early last year, and I don't even notice it. It just fires up and connects, and that is more or less the end of it. Obviously, there's encryption involved, so it's not as fast as and completely unencrypted gigabit Ethernet connection, but the amount of overhead that WireGuard puts on relative to, say, a regular IPsec VPN or an SSL VPN is tiny in comparison. We've even had people talk about using this inside the LAN. So rather than, they basically would want completely fully encrypted LAN traffic. So they would have WireGuard tunnels between your workstation and your server right there on the same LAN, which is interesting and quite possible. And actually, you wouldn't notice any slowdown, but it seems a little bit far-fetched at the moment to us. But who knows? But yes, it's very low overhead, very fast.
Okay. So when would you choose ZTNA versus regular VPN?
That's an interesting question all by itself. I mean, ZTNA does have uh, sort of, I guess you could call it a management overhead. I mean, there's accounts and there's networks and there's policies you can set up and everything. So uh, you probably would use a regular VPN when you don't have you're not too concerned about cybersecurity. Like, for example, if it were you just opening up a temporary VPN so you could get into the NVR and figure out what is going on, and then you're going to close it again for yourself, probably just a VPN connection would be just fine. But if that same thing was for, say, the NVR, the security camera provider, and you really didn't trust what the security camera provider was going to do, and we have had cases where the security camera provider did things that they were not supposed to do, including exfiltrating data. You would probably want to set this up, set up a VPN, sorry, a ZTNA, and then get them on that and make sure that the policies really lock them completely down to you are only allowed to access security, the NVR period, end of story, nothing else. And we know where you're from, so this IP is the only one allowed to access, etc. So that's where you probably use ZTNA.
So what do you think, which customer, what would that typical ZTNA customer look like?
That's a good question. Let's see. It runs the gamut. So I mentioned that customer with high or was concerned about their salespeople roaming around the place. That probably had about 20 or 30 employees total, and five or six salespeople. And so, but they were a local sports organization, so they really did not want the information getting out because that could cause all kinds of havoc. Apparently, sports betting is a thing these days. That's an example of one of the smaller versions. Whereas the large customer I mean, one of the larger customers we have is about 120 to 150 employees, and they have customers they have employees that are literally all over the world. So they needed some way of getting a handle on who's logging into what from where. And that's the other end of the spectrum. It works
Okay.
for, I mean, large to small. Sorry, yeah, basically.
So that kind of leads into the next one about travel to foreign countries. Is there any interruption or what changes when you do go abroad?
Well, we actually had one where the customer claimed the ZT and it didn't work at all. And it turned out that the partner has geofenced it to the city. And so the customer claimed it didn't work because the customer happened to live outside the city. So yes, it if you don't geofence it down that far, then or at all, then it'll work in a foreign country without any issues. This is subject to all the usual VPN restrictions, right? If you go into Beijing and you start opening up a VPN, you'll discover the Great Wall of China shutting you down pretty quick. There's no encryption technology I know of that will survive that.
Okay.
But as far as connecting in from other countries, that is not an issue. In our specific case, I mean, Ben in our support group lives in Mexico. He joins I mean, he's got a ZTNA agent running for access to our systems, and he has no problems with it.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have to have up-level equipment in place to utilize the ZTNA?
No. So the ZTNA, the up-level gateways have a ZTNA agent running on it, but you don't need to have an up-level gateway in place. You can actually use this as a separate service from up-level that is completely cloud delivered and allows your customers to have the benefits of ZTNA without the up-level equipment.
Okay.
Now, having the equipment makes it convenient because there's a nice peer available on the LAN. But if you stand up an agent on your Windows server, you have a peer available on the LAN.
Right. I know what you're going to say to this one. Pricing. So
Oh dear. Ask Corey.
I can certainly help you with pricing. To give you the quick answer, we have two tiers set up for this. We don't charge anything by the seat, but we do have what we call ZTNA Lite, which is intended for your smaller customers. It's basically the same price as your per VPN, and then the larger ZTNA, which would be the 15 and above users, is roughly two times the normal VPN pricing. But I can certainly go through that with you on a project by project basis. Any other questions at this time? Okay. Mobile OS support.
Oh, yes. For example, my Android phone over here runs the ZTNA agent. I think Roman's iPhone runs the ZTNA agent. It's pretty much, I mean, there's no issue with mobile OS support. So it installs and fires up. One caveat is that I've noticed that the mobile OS devices don't do the always on stuff as well as I would expect. Most of the time, my phone is connected, but sometimes I have to go in and say, click the connect button and then I'm connected. So, but I think that's more to do with my phone than anything else.
Okay. Um, do we have your questions answered? Any other questions at this point? Oh, here's one. I think you said this, but Mac support. So yes.
Yes. Yeah, anything that a WireGuard VPN client will run on, and I haven't yet seen any major OS that it didn't run on, is supported.
Okay. Right. Any other questions or anything that we can answer for anybody at this time?
Actually, the agent even runs on a bunch of VMs and Docker containers. And so if you have got a cloud VM somewhere that you want to drop a ZTNA agent on and give access without having IPsec VPN tunnels, it works.
All right. I guess follow up to that is will FIPS 140 be on the roadmap?
Oh, yes, we've had discussions about that. There's a bunch of compliance things that come along when we have SASE. So yes, that is on the roadmap. That is for sure on the roadmap.
Okay. Mhm. Any
Yeah,
other?
it's amazing how easier it is to achieve compliance requirements when you have a full up SIM and a bunch of compliance pro forma attached to it.
Perfect. All right. Wait a minute or so here just to see if there's any other questions that come in. But if you do have thoughts or questions that you think of down the road, please feel free to give me a call, send me an email. If you're on the phone with support, you can certainly ask any of those folks as well. But
Mhm.
we appreciate everybody taking time to meet with us this afternoon. So just one last check to see if there's any questions or any further comments at this time.
Short and sweet. We like it that way.
All right. Well, we do appreciate everybody taking time to join us, and we will be posting this as well, so you can share it with any of your texts or anything if there's any additional questions. Like I said, please feel free to reach out, give me a call, send me an email. We'll be happy to give you any additional information or answer any questions that come along, and we'll be rolling this out as it gets developed and as you have projects for it. So, with that, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good meeting all of you.